My name's Tim from Kettle House Brewery again. Today, this session speakers are Ellen Buchanan and Dave Glazer. Ellen will probably start off here, and she's a graduate of Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, where she received a degree in architecture with an emphasis in urban design. She has held positions with local government and economic development, planning, and community development in a wide variety of locations in the United States. Ms. Buchanan has a passion for downtown and central city redevelopment that originated with her father being a downtown merchant and was fostered by 7 years of living and working in New York City. She is a strong advocate for sustainable growth and the containment of sprawl, and has spent much of her career trying to encourage cities to take steps to revitalize their downtowns, historic neighborhoods, breweries, and foster appropriate infill development. Ms. Buchanan currently serves as a board member for the Downtown Business Improvement District, the Missoula Downtown Association, and the Missoula Area Economic Development Corporation. I'll go ahead and also introduce Dave right now. Dave is currently president of the MCDC, Montana Community Development Corporation, and serving as vice president of operations and in other capacities since 2007. MCDC is a nonprofit financing institution that provides loans and consulting to businesses across Montana with the goal of building community prosperity. My company has worked with MCDC on planning issues in the past. Prior to working at MCDC, Mr. Glazer served as the Chief Operating Officer and Environmental Scientist for environmental consulting firms and was a manager and operator for a number of small businesses. He is active in many economic development organizations throughout Montana and serves on the board of Homeward and MCDC. Welcome, team.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to go through a real quick, this is going to be pretty loose and informal, so you guys jump in anytime you have a question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a real quick series of slides to kind of frame what I think is or describe what I think is the framework for what we're using for downtown. And it's going to rely on the Downtown Master Plan, and I know you all, most of you have just sat through a presentation of that, and I'm not going to take you through Linda's presentation, but some of the strategies that came out of that Downtown Master Plan is really the underpinning for all the work that we're doing now, and then we'll launch into a discussion of what are some of the tools that we can use to implement those concepts. If I can remember how Julie told me to do this. So, you know, the Downtown Master Planning process was a pretty amazing process, and once again, you've heard a lot about that. But the buy-in here was probably stronger and more solid than any process like that I've experienced in my career, and I've been through a lot of these. The commitment to making it work is there, as you heard in the last session. And what we think that does is it really provides the framework for economic development in the greater downtown area. It gives us the guidance for public and private investments. It gives you some predictability, which is very important to the private sector, and provides protection for the historic neighborhoods around the downtown. That was one of the reasons that we went into this, was because of the conflicts that were being created by the transition from a large town to a small city, and that's a significant transition. And it defines the tools that we need to develop if we're going to have a sustainable and even more successful downtown. So out of that, we ended up with a land use framework, and you've heard what that consisted of: the housing, employment, the cultural development, the importance of retail in the downtown. Circulation framework is critical. We have a lot of work still to do with our circulation framework downtown, and finding the funds to make those changes, as any of you that work for cities or counties know, is very, very challenging. We came out with a number of management strategies. That's one of the things that I think really distinguishes this master plan from your typical planning process, is we ended up with very specific appendices that said, here's your parking plan, here's how you deal with housing and retail. We had a extensive market analysis. here's how you deal, here's your employment analysis, and here's some of the tools that you need to move forward with business retention and recruitment. And the same thing with tourism. There we go. And this is, you've seen this graphic, this is kind of the build-out scenario for the downtown. It's a 15 to 20-year vision. It's very ambitious. But as you heard in the last session, in this economy, we're really well on our way to realizing the implementation of major components of this plan. I've done a list of, just off the top of my head, some of the tools that we have available to us or that we need to create to be available for use downtown. Dave is going to kick off talking about new markets and some of the tools that MCDC administers, and I think he's got some PowerPoint slides, and then we'll just kind of free back and forth go through what all of these are and very briefly give you some idea of how they're being used in Missoula.
So really quick, who are we? I know John. I know Tim. In the room, are we people who work for city government? Raise your hand if you work for city government. How about small business owners? County government? This middle row, what are you?
Downtown Billings, so our development director, executive director, bids.
Oh, great. Okay. So an NGO who supports downtown vital. Okay, great. Excellent. So that's everybody. Okay. MCDC is, to put it in the simplest terms, a nonprofit bank. We're not a depository institution, and we provide financing to companies, small businesses across the state with our revolving loan fund. And then on the other side of that, New Markets tax credits, we provide financing to large-scale business development in low-income areas. Billings has a very large low-income census tract that we've looked at a number of projects in for New Markets. Nothing's popped yet, but that's coming. What's that? It will. Yeah, exactly. We get that feeling that Billings is really committed to getting some development in those areas. So I guess I'll start with New Markets. What do you?
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't know how to get to your PowerPoint.
Okay. MCDC works in cooperation with local development organizations. You know, for instance, in Billings, we work with Big Sky Economic Development Authority when their loan funds aren't capable of getting into the business because of restrictions they have. We'll come in alongside their capital, or if they need us to, we'll come in with our full capital. And they are an excellent source of referral for New Markets deals. Ultimately, what I wanted to do was, at the very simplest level, give you an idea of what New Markets looks like from 30,000 feet off the ground, so you just know, oh, we should call. If something's going on in your downtown area that could be of assistance. So I'm going to go very quickly through this slideshow. I don't want to hog the presentation. A couple years ago, MCDC got $40 million worth of tax credits. Basically, what we do is we take those tax credits and we sell them to entities that are hungry for tax credit. They have a tax liability. And then we turn around once we sell those tax credits and we take that money and we put that into projects across the state at very, very low interest rates, usually less than 1%, which then becomes equity after 7 years to the project. So it's basically an equity contribution to a project, upwards of 20%. So it is a really powerful tool for developing in low-income areas. And every downtown area in Montana, in the major metropolitan areas, has at least some section of it in a low-income area, or in a census tract. Here's that structure I just explained at the very basic level. If you'd like this slideshow, just call me afterwards. I'll send it to you. You can present it to your board. Yeah, I'll give you my card. General criteria has to be in a low-income census tract. All of Missoula's downtown area is in a low-income census tract. Has to have high community impact. These dollars are meant to leverage benefits for low-income people. Total project has to exceed $4 million in order for it to be sensible to the project. Has to be for commercial use, not entirely. As a matter of fact, the Butte Sears building, which is pictured here, has low-income housing above and ground floor retail, which is going to be a supermarket. And then in the basement is going to be basically a children's museum. So Tim, here's that map I was telling you about. These are the low-income census tracts in Missoula. One of the things that surprised me once we got into this program a few years ago was that the University District in Missoula qualifies as a low-income census tract. That does not make any sense to me. But the fact is there are a lot of apartments and dormitories that pull the median income down in that area and make it a low-income census tract. So Bonner is not a low-income census tract. Again, what? That's not right. Well, except Patty Canyon is in that low-income census tract, or is in that census tract, so it raises the median income of that. So anyway, give you an idea of where in Missoula these projects would qualify. We have maps for all of the major. We have maps for the state of Montana, and we can tell you if areas you are working in are in the low-income census tract. Or you can go to that website and punch in the address, and it tells you immediately. So here are a couple quick projects. This is the Smiths Building in Helena. It was a blighted area of Helena, and the hospital is going to end up doing, along with Dick Anderson Construction, a mixed use rehab and recreation facility that's going to have childcare and all kinds of wonderful things, and is going to be the keystone project that's going to turn the Malfunction Junction area of Helena and put it in the right direction. The project size on these things, honestly, there's really not a limit. I mean, if you come to us with a $500 million project, I just can't imagine that happening. But basically, $4 million to $100 million is the area we work in on project size. So, you call us and you say, hey, I have a project. It's in the low-income census tract. It's in my downtown area. And we say, yes, it is in the right area. And it's $4 million or larger. So those are the first two criteria, check, check. Then we start going through this. And we try to determine what sort of community benefit is going to be driven from this project to make sure that it's a highest and best use of these dollars. So the Garlington Building, downtown Missoula, was one of the ways that we qualify these projects for the New Markets program is if it's part of a downtown revitalization plan. And this one was. It was a big check mark for this project. Has ground floor retail. That was an important part of the downtown revitalization. It keeps essential services downtown in the sense that because Garlington moved from the building behind it into the new building, it's going to free up space for now what looks like the county is going to have its essential services in that building. $14 million project. Oh, last thing I'll say is the top floor there, you can see a half floor. The firm is, as part of the New Markets program, that space is available to the community for use for meetings and other things. It is a community space for portions of it. This isn't so important to downtown revitalization. So this is the Butte Sears Building in Uptown Butte. Hugely a part of their Uptown revitalization program and our plan. So it's 3 floors. The very top floor is actually condoized. It's not low-income housing. It's 5 very nice uptown apartments. And then 2 floors of low-income housing, not LIHTC, but low-income housing. And then the ground floor is a grocery store, which is a really big deal for an downtown area to have that sort of retail on the ground floor, opens the building to the community, and then the basement is the museum. In this example, this was a historic building, so we paired historic tax credits with New Markets tax credits and brought, in this specific example, 40% equity to the project rather than just 20%. Which the whole idea, it's very difficult for developers to say, yes, we want to do the right thing. We want to put it in the right place, and we want to save a historic building at the same time because it's so expensive. Well, these programs are designed to get those developers, those people who can afford to do these kinds of projects, to do them and do them right. Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I see job creation on that project, 45. Is that a requirement of this program that you create X many new jobs?
No, it's not a requirement of the program, but in the sense that, these projects they have to create jobs because of all the work that's done. It's just one of those things that's a check mark. Like, yes, it's creating jobs for low-income people. It's both construction, so pre, and then post-construction jobs. So the answer to your question is there will be jobs created, and we don't need to create a certain number in order for it to. One other thing I'll mention is in this instance, it was 40% equity to the project, but by twinning those historics and new markets. But in fact, you can go as high as 50%, which is a really big deal. This isn't in a downtown area, Town and Country Foods in Bozeman. It is near the university, but it's an employee-owned business that used new markets to build themselves a new grocery store. It was inside of an abandoned building, used to be a movie theater, and now it's a vital area with the grocery store and other retail. And it's just an amazing use of that program. Here's the Smith's food store, shows the architectural mock-up. So one other thing I'll mention, if your downtown area is not in a low-income census tract, it's not the end of the story. You can also qualify projects by population. So if a certain percentage of the population working at the business, and in this case it's a hotel, is low income, it will qualify the project as well. And we're working on a project right now in Bozeman that we're going to qualify by population, I think. So, community facilities. So if your downtown area wants to have a health center or other community facility, these are really, really easy for us to do in the New Markets program. So let's say you had a capital campaign where you're raising $5 million for a community facility and you got to $4 million. It's in a low-income census tract and serves low-income people. We'll bring the last $1 million to the deal. So your capital campaign's done at 4 rather than 5. I have cards for us, so if you have questions afterwards, just come grab me. Let's put Ellen back up.
So I guess we'll quickly talk about some of these things. I think most of you in the room are familiar with a lot of these tools. Maybe some of you are not. Once again, one of the important things in Missoula is the Downtown Master Plan Implementation Committee. It's a group that's of pretty important community leaders, for the most part, who are dedicated to implementing this plan. And we will use and have used a number of these tools already. We'll continue to develop our toolkit, if you will, and because we have a very ambitious plan to implement here. I don't necessarily think you have to have gone through the process that Missoula went through to have a committee like that. I think a lot of downtowns have a core group of people, and if you can create a single focus for that group of people, then you can do the same thing we're doing here. I'm going to start with tax increment financing, and do all of you, is there anybody in here who does not understand how tax increment financing works? Great, I don't have to do 101. So Missoula was one of the several communities in Montana that created an urban renewal district immediately upon the heels of the enabling legislation in the late 70s. Downtown was a victim of the mall, like most downtowns across the United States, and was evidently pretty much of a wasteland. I wasn't here then, but I was working in other downtowns that were in similar shape at the time. Missoula has been extremely creative in its use of tax increment financing. And I think you see the product of that in the downtown that we have now. Some communities have chosen to have more of a singular focus for their use of tax increment. We broadened ours out and really challenged the definition of public benefit to more than sidewalks and public infrastructure and those sorts of things. We created programs that let us write down the cost of facade improvement, and most of the buildings that have been renovated in the downtown that you see have tax increment money in those projects. We created a program that let us do life safety code compliance projects so that we were able to help buildings put in sprinkler systems and fire exits and fire separation. That's a huge problem in older downtowns because of when the buildings were built and the fact that mixed use is about all that really works in multi-story buildings in an urban setting, and current codes don't let that happen unless these buildings are retrofitted. And I've got some brochures in the back. When our downtown district sunsetted in 2005, our board said, guys, we need to toot our horn. Sit down and figure out what we did over the 25 years that we had tax increment available in downtown. And we set about doing that. And I'm the new kid in the office. I've only been there about 6.5 years. We got a couple of people who are 20, 25 years. There's just no turnover in our agency. And I'm only the third director since 1980. And I think it even surprised the veteran staff members when we started going through that process. And so we created a brochure that kind of shows a lot of before and after. And it also shows at the bottom of the page, lists all the projects that were invested in 5-year periods. And the first year, the bar is about like this. And by the time you get to 2000s, the bar is like this in very fine print. What we found when we went through the numbers is that we had reinvested $20 million in tax increment back into the downtown and had leveraged over $200 million in private and other public monies where we provided matches. So it's a significant tool. We've gone back in and created some new districts within what was the downtown district where we didn't quite get our jobs finished, and I think we'll continue to do that. So it's probably the most in my opinion, the most powerful economic development tool in the state of Montana right now that's available to cities. So if you're in a city that doesn't have it, look into it. Yeah.
I just want to reiterate that and also point out for those that haven't heard already, it will be under attack in this legislative cycle, so to speak.
Well, it's been under attack in every legislative session since I got here, but yeah, it looks like there are some forces out there that are looking at going after it. And a lot of that's just not understanding the strength and the benefit of the tool. When the downtown district sunsetted in 2005, all of those taxes that were increment that were coming to us to spend then went to the taxing jurisdictions, and it was a revenue increase to the city of between $400,000 and $500,000 a year. Same to the county, and the schools was around $700,000 a year. And that's revenue that presumably wouldn't have ever developed without the use of tax increment. When the district was getting ready to sunset, the Downtown Association and its board members, in anticipation of that, decided something needed to happen for downtown to replace that void, and the Business Improvement District was created, and that's another revenue source that can be invested into your downtown infrastructure. A lot of what BID does is clean and safe, but we've also created a pool of money where that we're using to retain downtown businesses that are in jeopardy of leaving for various reasons, and we've helped to enhance some businesses in a way that's helped them stay downtown. We're trying to build a recruitment kind of effort with the BID and the Downtown Association and the Downtown Master Plan Implementation Committee working together, and that's something that most downtowns don't have. A lot of us aren't even on the realtors' radar screens. We don't have the tools that they need. You go to the mall and you ask them what they have that's available, they can tell you right down to the penny and to the square foot what they have available. We don't have a clue what we have in downtown Missoula, and I guarantee you most of the rest of you can't do it either. If somebody walks in and says, how much second-story office space at $12 a square foot exists in downtown, and where is it? Most of us are ill-equipped to answer that question. But the folks who develop the big box areas and who develop the malls know that stuff. So we're in the process of trying to put that tool together. There are revolving loan funds out there, and Dave, I think, wanted to talk a little bit about some of the revolving loan funds that they have available in the small business development centers.
Our revolving loan fund is available across the state.
So where you heard.
Statewide loan fund. And we'll work with local partners in any town to, those local revolving loan funds to make sure that if they can't do the entire deal, we can come along with our capital. And so, our loan fund is there for, basically, we fundamentally believe that small businesses are really important to community prosperity. Small businesses give back to their communities and play integral parts of communities' strength. And if you look at the Missoula Downtown Association, I just happened to do this exercise a little while ago, and you look at the members of the MDA, 20% of the MDA members are clients of MCDC. And so, typically, when you're looking at the way banks are looking at deals, startups are harder for banks to do. 30% of our loans go to startups. Our loans go to businesses that fall just outside of bankability. So we create new customers for banks. Ultimately, they fall out of bankability because not quite enough collateral or not quite enough owner equity coming into the deal. And so that's called gap financing. We step in and we help that business get the financing they need and get them back to bankability so we can get our capital back out to the next business that's trying to build wealth in their company or personal life. Really important, there are a lot of revolving loan funds across the state of Montana, and those loan funds sometimes are very restricted, all the way to someone like us who's very, very, very flexible. We only have a couple of instances where we can't lend money into a business, if they're in the sin industries or they're a swimming pool, basically. Lots of loan funds are out there, and they have some capital, but it's very restricted. Maybe they can only lend it to manufacturing businesses or, instances like that. Well, we can then come in and help. And if we hear from any of you about a deal, well, we'll call those local loan funds to make sure they can't be involved, because we want them involved in those deals. It's in our best interest to have that happen. Small Business Development Center, so there are a network of them across the state, and Missoula's downtown and Bozeman's downtown are serviced by our small business development centers, as well as Hamilton and outlying communities in southwestern Montana. There are 10 of those centers. We only have 2 of them, and they are an awesome resource for businesses in the downtown area. A small retail business doesn't have access to the sorts of resources that a big box store does, as far as maybe data on traffic or market information, or simply somebody to go through their financials and say, hey, look, this is what I'm seeing. Your margins they don't match the industry, or your COGS are not matching the industry. Something is not right in your business. So this is a great resource, and it's free to your businesses in your downtown area. Billings has a really strong small business development center. So anyway, know that that's out there, and there are 10 of them, and they serve the entire state. So there's someone out there ready to help downtown businesses in your area.
A couple other things real quickly, talking about revolving loan funds. Missoula's been real successful in getting EPA brownfields money to place into revolving loan funds. Thus far, the bulk of that has been used at the old Sawmill District project, which I think a lot of you saw if you went to lunch at the stadium yesterday. That's an inner city brownfields reclamation site that has been very complicated and time consuming and very expensive, and we've been able to make use of these federal funds for extremely low interest loans to get that project done. Otherwise, I have no earthly idea when it would have been cleaned up. But another thing that these funds can be used for is asbestos removal. And one of the things we've talked about is when the Macy's building sells, keeping some of that money fluid and available in the event that asbestos removal becomes part of the challenge of redeveloping that building. We have a developer that's looking at it right now very closely, that's interested in it, who does exactly what Dave was talking about with the Butte building. They go to communities around the country, basically college towns. They find historic properties in urban cores, and they do a combination of historic tax credits and New Markets tax credits, and in the case of the Macy's building, their numbers indicate they're going to bring 50% equity to it if they're able to arrive at, come to the conclusion that they're going to move forward with the project. So, I think people think about the brownfields money as, outlying industrial sites, but it certainly has an application in the urban core where you're dealing with second and third generation construction sites, and nobody knows what they're going to find when they start digging, if that's in fact part of the project, and nobody knows what they're going to find when they start peeling away the inside of some of these older buildings. So that's a resource to look for or look to. Another really strong tool that we have in Missoula is a very, very effective parking commission. As we grow into a city from a large town, one of the big demands is structured parking. Surface parking lots in a downtown, in my mind, are nothing more than an opportunity for infill development. That's the most ineffective, inefficient use of real estate in a successful downtown that can probably possibly exist. But you have to have parking. We all still drive our cars, and parking structures are the way to go. They're very expensive, particularly in a state like Montana. You can't demand enough revenue for the private sector to get in the parking business like you can in bigger cities, so you've got to have that tool available to you, and our parking commission has been very successful in accumulating both cash and strong revenue streams, and has a significant amount of bonding capacity. The parking structure that we're looking at building just up the street on the corner with the empty surface lot it will be done with a combination of parking revenue bonds and tax increment revenue bonds. We've tried for 5 years, or probably 5 years, to figure out a way to bring New Markets into that deal. I'm not ready to give up on it yet, but we'll see. The other tool that we all have is the creation of special improvement districts. We try not to use those in downtown Missoula for things like sidewalks and some of the infrastructure projects that you typically see SIDs used for, because one of the things that makes downtown Missoula really special are the local businesses that are unique to our downtown. We don't have a franchise loaded downtown, and I don't think we want that. But once you start using special improvement districts to build basic infrastructure in a downtown area, you force the land values and the rents so high that the mom and pops can't stay any longer. And all you're going to get is the franchise businesses. So we've tried to stay away from that, but one of the things we've talked about is a parking SID. We had one for a number of years. It just ended, and 3 or 4 years ago? And that may be one of the things that we look at as a tool to assist with the development of structured parking, which then allows people to fully develop their land instead of having to build off-street parking. The big gap that we have downtown, in my opinion, is residential. It surprised me when I first came here that the downtown residential was as weak as it is because of the vibrancy of the retail downtown. But it hadn't evolved here yet, and the only way that it'll be able to is if we can provide adequate parking to support that, and the folks developing the residential don't have to carry that entire burden. And that's parking structures. We don't have any in the north end of town, and I think there are a lot of opportunities for residential development there. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at down the road, and that the master plan also pointed out to us. So there's a wealth of tools out there, bringing them to the community and figuring out how to piggyback them with each other, and how to couple those with private investment is the challenge. And I think it's one of the things that my predecessors at the redevelopment agency have done extremely well. So Dave, I think that's probably all I have to say. Dave, anything? We're certainly open to any questions. I think Missoula's been very creative in its use of a multiple array of tools and financing methods, and I think you see it when you walk around our downtown area. Gosh, I guess we should have had a longer presentation, huh?
We went over on the first segment that you guys weren't here for, so that was good.
No, I knew that. I was trying to compensate for Linda and Matt.
And don't forget the trade show. What do we call
The
it?
vendor fair.
Vendor fair.
Still taking place.
Yeah, still out there.
Couple out there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them even have candy.
We do, and don't forget the closing session starts at 11:30 as well. Mayor Egan's coming, yeah, I heard him speak, he's fantastic. Encourage you all to stick around for that. And then we'll cut you loose for some exploration time.
Ellen, did you guys talk about flushing district, lighting district?
No. Would you like for us to?
I don't know.
I don't, yeah. I mean, the Flushing District, we have a Flushing District downtown where the downtown properties pay a little extra assessment, and for that, we get the streets cleaned more often. The street cleaner comes through more often. There's some amenities that come with it. I'm not sure what they all are, although it shows up on my tax bill since I live downtown. Lighting districts are, to me, a challenge. I came here from the east where streetlights are paid for by the municipality, and one of the challenges in our downtown is that if you look at the lighting districts downtown, it's a checkerboard. You'll have a part of a block in one lighting district and another part of a block in a different lighting district, and if you go east or west, it's amazing. I think there, if I remember correctly, there might be 30-some lighting districts in the downtown core. So that was something we had to deal with in looking at how we were going to do the North Higgins project, because we're putting new street lighting in there, and we need new street lighting all over downtown. If anybody's walked around down here at night, we have more than our share of dark spots that aren't necessarily very comfortable, and particularly in the winter. So what's going to end up happening on Higgins is the city's going to own the street lights, and they're going to be metered, and I'm not sure what's been worked out as far as how you pay the electric bill, but I'm sure the city has dealt with that. I didn't have to. Public Works has. But that is probably a challenge for a lot of communities in Montana, where all of those costs are spread to the property owners, not picked up by the municipality. And if you really want me to get on my soapbox, I'll talk about the tax structure.
Ellen, Dave, either of you know of any programs or tools for retroing historic buildings with more energy efficient, HVAC and heating and cooling systems, besides just maybe some of the stimulus grants that obviously limited with the funding?
We've started a program in our third urban renewal district, which is the Brook Street corridor area. Almost in desperation, I guess, because that's kind of our first ring suburbia, and it's that area that nobody knows what to do with in terms of redevelopment. It's the 50s, 60s. Nothing was done very well from an urban design standpoint or an architectural standpoint for the most part. We created a program a year ago, this month, I guess, where we will give a grant for facade investment. What we've done is we've said, if you're going to renovate your building and you can only do this, but what we'd really like to see down there is more, we will bridge that gap either with a grant of up to $50,000 or a low-interest loan beyond that, and it's about a 1% loan. And one of the criteria for that is energy efficiency and green materials, not just aesthetics. But as a general rule, we can't find a way with tax increment anyway to get inside the building and demonstrate public benefit. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made for that when it's more energy efficient. We haven't gone there yet, but it is not dissimilar to the life safety code compliance stuff in some ways.
So I'm aware of 3 programs associated with energy efficiency in commercial buildings. One is through the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Environmental Quality here in Montana. They have an energy efficiency program. The other would be USDA, Rural Development. They have a really amazing program. One of our loan clients actually utilized it recently to upgrade their facility. I was startled at how much money they ended up getting to upgrade their boiler. Now, that program specifically is geared towards rural businesses, but this business was in Bozeman. So, Bozeman is not a major metropolitan area as classified by the federal government. So you check with them. Then the last one I'll say is directly through Northwestern Energy. They have demand side management program, and they've done some work in considerable work in commercial area. So those are 3 programs off the top of my head.
Chris, I think Larry Gallagher with HUD was talking about some programs they have as well. HUD.gov and some other tools there.
Got anything else you want to talk about?
Well, let's thank our speakers.
And I'm happy to announce that Chris Nauman and Ellie Staley from the Downtown Bozeman organization have offered to host this event next year, so we will be going to Bozeman. Very much appreciate the time you guys have taken to come here to be with us today. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned something. I hope you take back with you connections to people that you can use in follow-up work that you have. Pick up the phone, call somebody. We've got a lot of resources in the state of Montana to help you out. If you're on the east side of the state, call Billings. If you're on the west side of the state, call Missoula. We're here to help you. We're here to offer as much as we can to help you in your communities. So be sure to take advantage of that. I'm excited today to have a very special person with us to close out our session. He is Missoula's beloved mayor and has been since 2006 and was elected to his second term in 2009. He is bright, funny, engaging, and serious about economic development in our community. He grew up across the river from downtown Missoula, graduating from Hellgate High School and the University of Montana. With a bachelor's degree in journalism, he was an award-winning writer and editor for the Missoulian for a little more than 15 years. He served on the Missoula Downtown Association Board of Directors for 4 years and was the board president in 2002. I can't believe it's been 8 years. He's a wonderful community contributor, serving as an auctioneer and MC for hundreds of nonprofits in our community. He currently serves on the board of directors for the Montana League of Cities and Towns and was recently appointed to the Montana Gaming Advisory Council this year. He and his wife Tracy own Wide World of Travel. Please give a warm welcome to our Missoula Mayor, John Engen.
Well, thank you all very much. It's really weird to be behind this in this setting. Is this okay if I'm?
Yeah, you're fine.
All right. Just a quick check. Okay, we're good. Ron, do you need Mike or what do you need?
He needs money.
Just go? Perfect. Story of my life. Thank you all for spending a little time with me. Am I the last thing standing between you, lunch, and the road? Fantastic. All right. I will endeavor then to be mercifully brief. I can tell you, however, that as we've marched down a path here in Missoula, I was telling Mayor Jimson earlier that it is much easier to be a mayor when there's money around, a little more difficult when there's not. Interestingly enough, though, we have found that in my organization, the City of Missoula, a really rotten, stinking recession can spur creativity in a way you may not have imagined. So in the wake of lots of bad news, difficult headlines, revenue issues, and a few expense issues, what we've discovered is that we have some creative and entrepreneurial spirit even at City Hall, and a lot of enthusiasm for really capitalizing on who we are as a place. And some of you drew short straws and walked with me downtown yesterday on a tour, and one of the things that we talked about relentlessly was our sense of place. And there's not a soul in this room who doesn't represent a place with a sense of place. The critical issue here is how do we maintain that sense of place, capitalize on who we are, while still attracting folks to do business with us and in our communities. How do we drive jobs, wealth, and all the good stuff that comes with that. So we've been working on what we call the Best Place Project, which is a sort of a jump start of economic development in the city of Missoula. And what we found over time is probably some of the things you've heard today. If we're not pulling together in some sort of vaguely unified manner, we don't get very far. It's tough to work across purposes. It's certainly not efficient to duplicate efforts. And we ended up, when Smurfit Stone announced that it was closing its mill here, 417 jobs go away in Missoula County. Those jobs paid an average of $70,000 a year, and because we're all Montanans, we know that that's actually a pretty good job, right? Those jobs went away in December. Shortly thereafter, I get a call from the vice president for real estate at Macy's in Cincinnati. I appreciated the courtesy of the call, but the news wasn't great. Mayor, just wanted to call and let you know before the press release hit that we're closing our downtown Missoula store. Well, somebody had served as president of the Downtown Association. I'm not sure we ever had a meeting during the course of which Macy's wasn't mentioned. At that time, it was the Bon or the Bon Marché, and the specter of the disappearance of the Bon Marché, Macy's, was sort of a cloud over almost every meeting, and the notion that someday that business would go away was terrifying in some ways. What do we do when that anchor leaves? Because many people serving on the Downtown Association board, lots of folks in the community, still remember when J.C. Penney, which was a downtown store, went to Southgate Mall, as did all sorts of other stores that used to do business downtown, including mom and pop Main Street businesses, the folks that we knew to be great supporters of downtown. They were no longer doing business downtown, and they had responsibilities elsewhere. Fortunately, we continue to have that entrepreneurial spirit. Downtown Association was born. A number of other things happened. The fact of the matter is, we lose a mill and we lose an iconic downtown department store in the same month. And the question becomes, despite the fact that the mill is slightly outside of my jurisdiction, the question becomes, what are you going to do about it, Mayor? At which point I left town for a couple of weeks and I decided to stay. But that question became fundamental to me. What are you going to do about it? And I had to turn it on its head a little bit and say, what are we going to do about it? The lingering question is, what is Missoula's economic development strategy? And as I started asking that question among friend and foe alike, the answer was pretty relentless. I don't know. The second question was, who's in charge of it? We don't know. So what we're doing today is working together with all sorts of organizations who do all sorts of work around economic development, trying to figure out what we do best, what we don't do particularly well, how we can shore up our individual efforts to create a collective effort that has real, serious impact. And we need to, frankly, just develop goals around what we want to do. And it becomes as simple for us as creating wealth. And you do that by creating jobs. And those jobs have to be at a particular wage. They have to provide the benefits that come with those good jobs to make things happen. And surprisingly enough, at the beginning of this effort, there was, I think, considerable fear, actually. What's he talking about? And who's going to lose their job in the world of economic development? And the answer is, we need to talk about this, and nobody needs to lose their job. We just need to work together. We need to create a cohesive strategy for economic development. We need to set goals, and then we need to pursue those goals. It's as simple as that. We haven't done that as a community for a long time. We've done parts of it, in different places over time. So we're marching down this path. A lot of this has to do with fundraising and creating organizations, but some of the side effects of this conversation have been really interesting for me. For example, the folks who have economic in their name, Missoula Area Economic Development Corporation. Good folks, been doing work here for a long time. Those folks are telling me, we've never been funded appropriately to do X, Y, and Z. Significant economic development activity. We haven't been funded to do that, so we've done the stuff that we've been funded to do. You know, in effect, you start chasing dollars to keep your program running. And it's perfectly natural. There's nothing wrong with it. But the fact is, it doesn't necessarily match your community strategy, right? Those dollars are usually attached to somebody else's strategy, somebody else's circumstance, and really somebody else's opportunity. So we have to make some of our own. And a piece of that is the fact that the mayor can't say, we're going to do economic development completely differently. Giddy up. Here's how we're going to do it. Person down the hall from me, make economic development happen. Make people rich. Make it so. This is when you guys raise your hand to have a convention in the fall, that's the only unanimous vote I've ever seen in my life. So what this is about the public, and that public, for better or worse, made manifest in me, City Council, and the many people who work for the City of Missoula and the NGOs with whom we're closely associated, working together with the private. And frankly, that's anybody with a sense of reason and a wallet. We need to fund these sort of efforts. They don't happen for free. And so what we've been able to do, I think, is create a fairly solid coalition of folks who want to fund an economic development strategy that's serious in Missoula. And in doing so, what we end up doing is taking the best of what NADC has to offer, taking the best of what MDA has to offer, taking the best of what Montana Community Development Corporation has to offer, take the best of city government, chamber of commerce, businesses. We have resources in this community, folks on Main Street and folks, well, we don't really have a Wall Street. It's probably good under the circumstances. But we have lots of folks with real business savvy and acumen who are resources for us as well. We start pulling in the same direction, I think we're going to get some stuff done. So that's what's cooking today. The interesting thing for me has been that if we start talking about economic development in a serious way, folks start talking to us in serious ways. That happens in two ways. One is I've had probably 8 reasonably serious conversations with folks who, A, want to expand their businesses in Missoula, but they've never heard from city government before. And when they have, it's always been about, you're out of compliance with one of my permits. And so we send you a letter and ask you to comply. And that's the business's interaction with city government, right? So what I've been doing is trying to have interactions where we talk about what does your business need? What makes sense for you in terms of expansion? How does that fit in with what we do as city government, as municipal government? How do we work together? And really, those conversations, we still have to draw statute at the permits. I mean, we are regulators to a certain degree, but we're also, I hope that we can also be partners and catalysts for really good things happening. It turns out, I didn't know this before I was mayor, I rely on something called, maybe it's tax base, right? Yeah. So, if we grow wealth, we grow tax base, which means what I do continues to happen. We continue to provide excellent services. We create an environment where people can do business, where people can live, where people can play, where people can have home lives. So it's all kind of cool. And a lot of it really turns out to be about communication. The one takeaway that's been really interesting for me, all these partners, all these folks who have worked in the economic development space in one way or another, whether you're a downtown association, whether you're a redevelopment agency, whether you are a lending program, MADC, MCDC, Convention Visitors Bureau, almost to an organization, those folks are saying, we'd like to co-locate. We'd like to do business in the same place. So that if you're interested in doing business with Missoula, with a capital M, come on into our warm embrace. I may not be able to fix your deal today, but Linda can, or Helen can, or Heidi can, or Dick can, and the list goes on, and you're all in the same place. And there's forgive me, this is an MBA word, synergy. And there is also communication and a spirit of collaboration. And there's also some real efficiency in it. So we're interested as we march forward in sort of understanding how we can continue to work together sort of toward that end, and how that looks in the community. And really, if we're presenting a united front, I think there's tremendous power in that as well. One of our consultants suggested we are, whether we know it or not, we're in competition all day long for the kind of jobs that we're talking about. We're in competition all day long. And if we're not making an effort to seriously be in the game, we don't get to play, right? One quick sort of downtown specific piece here. One of the tools we've used, and some of you have heard me talk about this, it must have been about 2006, Ellen Buchanan and I visited Charleston, South Carolina. We were there for a conference on urban design, and there were a number of mayors there. So the room was very hot most of the time. Thanks, I'm here all week. And one of the things we heard there from colleagues around the country and urban design professionals, transportation professionals, was if you want to be serious about what your place is about, you need a plan for it. And so we came back with the idea that there was no plan for downtown Missoula, right? Today we have a downtown master plan that is the product of a collaboration. And it's a small bit of evidence that we can present to the outside world, those of us or those in the community, in the world, who may not automatically love Missoula because it's so wonderful. They might need some additional evidence. The downtown master plan tells somebody who wants to invest, somebody who wants to grow their business, in fact, somebody who wants to visit here, it tells folks that we're serious about what we want to do in downtown Missoula, that we're in it for the long haul, that we weren't afraid to make an investment in preserving our place. And if you want to be part of our place, we'll embrace you, but here's how it's going to work. And, you know, around the country, folks are used to that. If they want to be in your market, they understand that there are some circumstances surrounding that market. We create the circumstances. We own our place. We define our place. And we bring folks into our place who don't change it, but enhance it, right? So, sorry, I talked too much. What's for lunch? Doc, is there a noodle extravaganza over there? Is that what I'm seeing? All low fat. All low fat? Oh, you vex me, sir. You vex me. I'm happy to answer any questions or make up answers to your questions as they come along. Mayor.
Is it true that Missoula is able to enhance some of the stimulus funds for the street design and development downtown?
Absolutely. You're sitting next to Brent Campbell, who has worked diligently over the years to ensure that that downtown streets project, along with a number of other partners in this room, got done. So on our tour yesterday, we went to a place that is very Missoula. We went to a street that looks like it is in Europe. It's 3 blocks of North Higgins Avenue. That was a 4-lane road, 2 lanes one way, 2 lanes another way, and a bunch of stoplights. What it is today is a 3-lane road, parking on either side, bike lanes on either side of the cars, and then sidewalks. So everybody gets to move up and down that road in one way or another, and we hope they get to do so safely. And we hope it creates an environment that is commensurate with the scale of the downtown. It's one way, again, to set you apart from what I call generica, which is you all have a reserve street, or a city nearby you has a reserve street, a place where unless you looked at the mountains, you'd see any town USA, because everybody's got a Target and everybody's got a Costco. It's good to have those things, there's nothing wrong with them, but they don't define your place. A streetscape, design can design your place. So if you get a chance, go down there, have a look at the streets project, which was indeed paid for, in this case, by stimulus money that actually was funneled through Department of Commerce, thank you Tony Creedy, and landed right where it should have here in Missoula, and gave us an opportunity to build something that we weren't going to be able to build. And there are a number of those examples on the ground today. So that was good stuff. It's about a $1.2 million project, most of which went into lights. Just kidding.
Yesterday, you mentioned your TIP funds and then your private dollars. I was wondering if you could say that.
Sure. So, for example, in District 1, our first tax increment financing district, urban renewal district under the statute, that district lived for 20 years by virtue of a bond. That district leveraged additional investment over the millions of dollars of increments that were used each year over the course of the life of that bond. Leveraged what, 200 million? Was that your number? Leveraged $200 million of additional investment. So it's not just public money going into projects. It's the sense that public money makes private money go further. And our public money tends to get to be used for the least sexy stuff. A lot of what I do is handle sewage all day long. That's, for better or worse. And it's really tough to get folks really worked up to invest in a pipe. But there's lots of other things that come with that. And that's, it's pretty cool. Yeah. But, that's it. When you have, part of the difficulty of being the head of municipal government is that I want to be everybody's partner. Well, that's code for I got no money, but can I come to your meeting? Well, I don't blame folks for not necessarily wanting to be my partner, but I don't bring anything to the meeting, right? Except charm and good looks. And apparently not even those things. So what's left, right? But we do have, that's a fantastic tool. Our ability to invest in infrastructure is a fantastic tool, and it's a builder of community. Cindy.
John, do you think it's a good idea to have on the agenda of the next League of Cities and Towns meeting a presentation of this Montana Main Street Association programs, and if so, would you help us make that happen?
I'd be happy to. I'm trying to remember if that's on the agenda. I haven't seen one there.
Alec is still working on the final agenda, but I will check to see if there's a slot.
Yeah. And Alec Hansen, that many of you know, our executive director, Alec's a big fan of the program, so absolutely, yeah, I think it'd be great.
Okay, is it coming out?
In October.
October 6th, 7th,
I
and
see.
8th. Yeah.
Is it already set for this year, though?
The beauty of the league is we're pretty light on our feet. Yeah. And in Butte, you never know when somebody's going to end up not being able to speak.
Mayor, I can't believe that a Bobcat fan like myself is about to say this, but have you ever considered running for governor?
I have, but what I've heard is that I don't play in Glendive. So once you cross that divide, I have relatives in Billings, and they think I sleep in Birkenstock. So,
That's why I preface that I would want to.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, what I always say is there are two things probably preventing me from being governor. I would have to leave Missoula, and I would have to be elected. So, a couple of deal breakers there. I told someone today the reason I'm not a pharmacist is because of science and math. But it turns out we're going to need a governor, aren't we? All right. Well, I'm keeping my eyes open, so I bet we can round somebody up. What else can I tell you? Nothing? Julie.
I just, before you go, if no one has any more questions for John, if I could just thank our sponsors again, then.
No.
No, that's okay.
Yes, please, Julie, thank you.
Okay, no, I really would. Our major corporate sponsor this year was First Interstate Bank, John Corner from the bank in Missoula. President Communications, is Randy Freeze still here? She left. Edwards with Northwestern Energy and Butte. Last sponsor was the Montana Department of Commerce's Small Business Development Center. I just wanted to thank you for your generous support, and we really appreciate it.
And as some of you know, usually at a conference like this, you'll have a raffle ticket under your chair, and then you get to take whatever the centerpiece is. Well, y'all get to take one of these home. Look under your chairs. Well, pleasure to see y'all. Thanks for all the good work that I know you do in your communities. It's tough, but when you believe in your place, it makes a tremendous difference. I mean, one of the things that we all, I think, collectively have going for us is, believe it or not, some of this is about attitude. And there are all sorts of folks who want to tell you that your places are in peril. And your job is to counteract that every day with the good stuff you're doing. Because if they win, everybody loses.